This week on the podcast, I had Heather Hart, a runner and running coach, and someone who I've followed basically since I learned ultra running was a thing. Because if you go onto any internet source and start looking for ultra running, you are going to fairly quickly find someone following one of her free plans from Relentless forward Commotion. And as much as I hope someday to have her back on to talk about those things, today we're talking about safety. And I gave a much longer intro, preamble, whatever you want to call it, in the podcast itself, so I'm not going to take up too much time here. But suffice to say that everyone could find something to learn and benefit from in this episode. Yes, based on when this is being released, right after the Eliza Fletcher murder, I'm sure it's safe to assume that we are going to discuss safety for women while running. But we're also going to discuss safety on trails and just safety from mountain lions and ways to stay safe while we're doing the thing that we love. If you feel really safe and do a great job of prep and planning and pay a lot more attention to it than I do, then that's fantastic. But the whole goal here is to help people stay safer, no matter who you may be. As I'm going to say again in about 2 or 3 minutes, the whole goal for both Heather and I, in general, is to help people do hard stuff outside. And if this helps anybody feel a little better about doing hard stuff outside, then we've achieved our goal. We try to take a very level approach to a very complicated topic at times. And end of the day, I just hope you get something out of this and that it makes your life a little better. And if it makes somebody else's life a little better, please share it with them. Let's get on with it. Welcome to the Eat Well, Sleep Great, Run Far podcast. My name is Will Frantz, and I'm here to help you go farther, faster, and longer without injuries, gut problems, or giving up your favorite foods. Today on the podcast, I have Heather Hart. She is a running coach, exercise physiologist, and creator of Relentless Forward Commotion. Heather is someone I've followed for almost as long as I've been in the running world, because as many of you probably know, as soon as you join some ultra running Facebook group and get into this space, it is damn near guaranteed that at least one person in there will be following one of her free online running programs. And I just told her this, but I've learned a lot from her blog. And when I reached out to another running influencer, for lack of a better term, to talk about running safety, she recommended that I contact Heather, and Heather responded immediately and was more than kind enough to come on the show. So thank you for being here. And I would love you to introduce yourself and say a little bit about you and what you're doing here.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to, I'm always happy to talk about running in general, but especially topics that are currently at the front of our minds. But so yeah, like you said, I'm Heather Hart. I've been in the blogging, running blog industry since about 2009. I'm a grandma here in that kind of in that world. I'm an exercise physiologist, certified strength and conditioning specialist, and my husband and I own Heart Strength and Endurance Coaching. So we have a team. What are we at? 10 coaches.
Oh, yeah.
And, we mainly work with ultra runners, but we work with a lot of different athletes. So it's a really cool job to have. I love it.
Really cool. Yeah, I agree. Couldn't agree more, very honestly. So I just want to say a couple things before we get started. Not to use to the audience, we're going to talk about running safety. Yes, this was spurred by the recent Eliza Fletcher murder. No, I don't think the only people who need to hear this are women. And very honestly, I should have done this fucking months ago, many months ago. My whole goal all the time is to help people enjoy doing hard things outside. And if people don't feel safe outside, they're less likely to go do those hard things. And the reason I haven't done it before now is that it's a huge blind spot for me. Personally, I've never felt unsafe or targeted for who I am as a person. Nobody has ever harassed me for my sex or gender or orientation or skin color in any way that has ever made me feel unsafe. Annoyed, sad, frustrated, not unsafe. And most of the men I know are in a pretty similar boat, and very few of them worry about their own safety. at least regularly. And an appreciable amount of the women I know do worry about their own safety for the sole reason that they're women, at least, once a week. So I really wanted to have a woman come on to talk about this in a way that I just can't relate to very well. And I'm sure some men can. I can't. So I'd love to have more women on the show anyway, because I think the coaching world's a little too skewed toward the male perspective. But that is one of the reasons I brought Heather on. And two, we're not saying necessarily like you are not safe. I mean, I am, but I don't want to be alarmist about it. Like as many people point out online in this conversation, like there's danger in everything. Like one of the most dangerous things you can do is drive. And most of us do that on a daily basis. That is why we take safety classes. And if you already feel safe when running, I'm not here to preach at you, and I doubt Heather is either. But if you or someone you know doesn't feel safe, then hopefully some of this is helpful. And third, I've seen an appalling amount of vitriol about this in the past few days for anyone who even like dares to discuss this topic. A local runner here in Utah, Bartley, made an Instagram post, and he got some pretty hateful comments for a variety of reasons, and none of them made sense to me. On one hand, somebody basically said the equivalent of like, we're never safe, grow up. And on the other hand, somebody attacked him for using the phrase our women when he clearly meant women of the running community. And so if we're pissed about us talking about this, please stop listening to it. There's better things you can do with your day than listen to a couple personal trainers talk about topics that will make you angry. And if you listen to it anyway and get mad, message me. I am happy to talk with you for all day about anything. I was a philosophy major. I believe in having long discussions about shit that piss people off. But if you try to do this in the comment section, it's just going to be deleted. So message me. I'll talk all day. Do not harass Heather for being kind enough to come on and help. And here we go. So Heather, with that preamble, like I would love you to talk a little bit about safety with running and how you feel about it and anything you have to say.
Sure. Yeah. So, the first thing I really want to talk about and address is kind of along the lines of what you were just saying. There is a lot of anger and hurt in the community right now, and there's a lot of fear, and I think a lot of it's coming from so many different directions. As a woman who has been running for, really since I was a teenager, but more structured running, at least the last 16 years, this is nothing new. I don't think that men realize, how we women as a whole, we don't often go out, no matter where we are, whether it's our neighborhood or a trail or even, working out in the gym, without the expectation that we might be catcalled, we might be harassed, we might be followed. This is kind of just an unfortunate inherent part of being a female runner. So I think that there's certainly a good bit of anger from women, and I don't want to speak for all women, but that all of a sudden there's this attention to the topic, and we're like, well, where have you been? Where, now people want to talk about it, but where have you been this whole time?
Yeah.
So there's that, and and then of course we've got the for lack of better terms, the mansplaining going on all of a sudden, men telling us, well, you shouldn't be out at this time of day. Well, you shouldn't be wearing this, or you should turn on your watch, or you should turn off your watch, or you should do this, or you should do that. And it's like, you think we haven't thought of this? So, I think it's super tragic what happened. And it's unfortunate that we have to have these conversations, but we do have to have these conversations. And the best case scenario would be that we could be like, hey guys, stop it. Let's just cut the shit. Like that. Why are we doing this? And I've had so many comments from women, even on posts I've made, who say this, like, we should not be held responsible for our safety. We shouldn't have to stress about this every time we go for a run. It should be on men to stop hurting and harassing women. But the reality is that's not going to happen. I would love to say that could just happen. I have two sons myself, two teenage boys that I'm trying to raise to be respectful, men. But the reality is humans are inherently bad at times, and that there's always going to be dangerous, bad situations out there. So we have to be prepared. So it's a great time to kind of talk about all of this.
100%.
Yeah. And one other thing, if we're going to get it all out of the way here at the beginning is, also want to point out that there was a huge, media outcry for this most recent murder, but again, this is not the first. And we've had,
Thank
women of
you.
color, indigenous women, like we've had
Yeah.
so many other instances where there were, whether it was harassment or violent attacks or death that did not get this media. So again, this is happening. It's here. So I want to kind of talk about this, coming from the point of view, again, as a woman. I like to consider myself like a tough, badass woman. Like I do
I
hard
mean,
things, right?
I
Like I
think
run
I
a hundred
think very
milers
few
for fun.
people would disagree with you on that. Yeah.
Well, we a lot of us in the running community, I think that way. Like we do hard things, and so we think we're really tough. And in a
Sure.
situation like this, we think to ourselves, like, well, if it happened to me, I'm gonna fight back, or I'm gonna do this, or I'm gonna do that, or whatever. But the reality is that when these situations happen, you often don't know how you're going to react, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever, as a coach and a trainer, if you've ever had this situation, but to kind of go on a side note here, how many times have we had to take CPR classes? Like every 2 years, over and over and over. Like we know what
Yep.
to do in the back of our mind, but have you ever been in a situation where you've had to provide CPR?
Nope.
It's terrifying. I had,
Right.
about,
Have you
5
had to?
yeah, well,
Oh
so
shit.
about 5 years ago, I was working in a gym, 5 or 6 years ago, and I was doing a new member orientation. And I was, taking this guy through like the most basic, like, here's how to use this machine, here's how to use that machine. And he had filled out all the paperwork, everything was clear. There was no reason for me to suspect that anything could happen. He had like a major cardiac event, huge. Like he was talking to me, and then just like that, he was on
Oh
the floor
wow.
dead, like he was done. And it was the scariest thing that I had ever seen. I panicked. Thank
Yeah.
goodness there were two women who were retired Air Force nurses, I think, right there. And they were
That's
like, they
badass.
went right into, they hopped right into action. And long story short, the man lived. Thank goodness, he lived. But it was not what I ever pictured I would do. I never thought that, like, if that situation happened, that I'd be the one to freeze and just not act. And I think,
Absolutely.
yeah, and so I think the same goes for these safety issues. Like we can say all day long, like, if this happens to me, I'm going to fight back. But are you really? Do you have that training? So the first thing I recommend for, especially women, but men as well, is self-defense courses, and not just, watching a cute little video online or these things that mean well, but like actual hands-on, make you uncomfortable kinds of courses.
Fully agree.
One
Yeah,
off
like
the
if your self-defense course doesn't make you uncomfortable, you're in a bad self-defense course. Like
exactly.
I did martial arts for years,
Oh yes, yeah,
better part of a decade, and like those courses should be unpleasant.
yeah,
Not you shouldn't feel dangerous, but it should be unpleasant.
absolutely, absolutely. And I've taken a couple, and I've been in situations where people are, they are pulling my hair, they are in your face. And it's,
Yep.
even though in the back of your mind, I am completely safe right now. This is not real. This is a training situation. It's still scary. It's really
Yeah.
kind of uncomfortable and scary. But like anything we do, the more you practice this, the more you're faced with these uncomfortable situations, the more that becomes almost second nature. So if you find yourself in that situation, you react the way you should, and you don't freeze up and panic. So, I you were involved in martial arts. I'm sure you have some great recommendations for courses. The one I know off the top of my head that was recommended by a friend who is a police officer is the RAD what is it? Rape aggression defense. There we go. I want to make sure I get that
Okay.
right. And I know, like, here where I live in Myrtle Beach, the police departments routinely offer that for free to community members.
Yep.
So I think that there's different levels or different types. Like there can be all women's classes, or like seniors or teenagers. So yeah, do you know of any other ones that you would recommend?
I know a little bit from the like martial arts world. I actually really like that one, and I would
Okay.
say first start wherever you need to start feeling comfortable. And then second, you should probably get to a point where you're surrounded with people that kind of make you uncomfortable. So if you need to start in an all women's class to feel comfortable starting, you should do that. If you are scared of being attacked by a man, you should eventually have to defend yourself against a man in one of these classes. And there's an old, I think it's a Marine saying, but it's like you fall to the level of your training, right? So like you need to train these situations in order to be there. You're absolutely right. There's no way. And you'll hear that time and time again, that you really never know how you're going to react. Mm-hmm. And I think if you're looking for martial arts, my ideal recommendation would be some form of jiu-jitsu, like Brazilian jiu-jitsu especially. It is very much an art that is designed to help you defend yourself against a larger attacker. It can take years to get good at it, right? So this is not a like solved by next week problem. Mm-hmm. Something like Krav Maga, there are often classes that is often a quicker thing. They teach that to the Israeli military, and there are some very good moves in there that can be helpful. My general advice is fighting dirty is not a real thing. Go for the soft spots, like put your thumb in someone's eye socket. Like and I say that bluntly for a reason. Like it should be unpleasant. Like nobody should be happy about doing this shit. But somebody is like attacking you, your thumb should try to reach their brain, right? Mm-hmm. Like get out. And this is the other thing they'll teach you in self-defense class is like, don't get taken to a second location. Get it, like if that's where you are, you're probably not going to be in good straits anyway. So get out. That your best chance is to get escape. And I actually do really like the RID class. It's a good one. I like that. At least it's like the fact that it's often offered for free. It is fairly well backed by a lot of police officers, and there are like different levels to it is really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have to laugh because my husband, he did martial arts for a long time years ago, and he always says to me the same thing. What does he say? Eyes, nose, throat, and balls. Like go for just as hard as you can. Do not worry about. Obviously, don't worry about hurting the other person. Just go for it. And then on your note about don't get taken to a second location. This was a tip given to me years ago that just stuck with me. Sometimes people say something that just sticks forever. And I believe it was a police officer who told me this, but I could be wrong. Anyway, the advice was, if you're in a situation that makes you uncomfortable, you make that person uncomfortable. As crazy as you need to be, do it. And the example that was given to me was, I laugh, but this is not a laughing matter, but it was something along the lines of like, start screaming things like I'll eat your girlfriend's eyeballs out with a dull spoon. Like I will, just go nuts. And I had some
it's such good advice though, for real.
Crazy, right? But it makes sense. Like, I had some comments in a post I made on Instagram from other women who had fathers who were police officers who gave them that advice and said, like, if you have to like pee yourself or like, like shit your pants or mm-hmm. whatever you need to do to make yourself make that other person so uncomfortable that they're going to back off, do it. You never want to like give in and think that this person's going to take pity or sympathy on you, because it's not going to happen. So like, scream your face off. I've heard this advice, and again, I don't know how good this advice is, but another thing that stuck with me, don't necessarily yell for help, yell fire, or yell something that's going to make people turn and look. And whatever you need to do, like make a scene.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I've heard mixed stuff on the fire because people might run the other way, but like, you want people to look at you, whatever it is. Like, yeah, they'll often hear advice to children, like they'll tell them that like I'm being abducted is like a good thing, because people often look at that more than like no or something like that, right? So it's kind of the thing that you want people to look at you, and whatever that might take. It might like scream the worst word you can think of. I don't care.
Yeah,
Like, have people look at you so that they're aware that something is happening.
exactly. Yeah. And I would rather, personally look absolutely nuts and even risk like looking nuts in a situation where maybe I wasn't in the danger I thought I was, but I would rather that than
100%.
yeah.
I mean, it might even avoid the fight, right? Like,
It's
this
true.
is the thing. Like, I I've not been in many altercations, but it is pretty easy to get out of a fight either by typical as a man, either typically by like buying someone a beer and just being like, I don't care, just like go away,
Mhm.
or like saying some crazy shit,
Mhm.
and because nobody wants to deal with that. Like, it's just easier, right? Like,
Mhm.
make it harder for them to be there than not.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, so another very common piece of advice that I hope other people are putting out there. We've seen, especially in the last week, endless products available. Whether it is pepper spray, whether it's you'd think I would remember all the names of these, but like I've seen the blades that go on the fingers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, uh the zap. Well, I can't. Come on, brain. It's the end
Taser.
of the day. Yeah,
Yeah.
taste it. What do you call it?
Yeah.
The zapper.
The
Um,
zapper. Yeah. The tasers. Yep.
yeah, or whether it's a firearm,
Guns. Yep.
these things are useless to you, if not dangerous to you, if you don't know how to use them.
Absolutely
Um,
true.
like on the most simplest end of it, like say you've got that knife or blade on the end of your hand and you don't know how to like properly throw that punch or do what you need to do, it's not going to work. If your pepper spray is in your hydration pack buried under like 3 gel wrappers, and something happens, you're not going to be like,
Correct.
hold on, let me dig this
Yes.
out. And then especially like with if we're talking firearms, like you've got to know how to confidently and quickly use these things.
Mm-hmm.
And so my recommendation there is practice, 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 practice. Having it alone is not enough. You've got to, whether you take that pepper spray outside and, put some goggles on and make sure the wind doesn't blow it back and learn how far it sprays, learn
Yeah.
how hard how much pressure it takes to push down on the button for it to actually go. All of these things you've got to practice, and not just once or twice, but like make this a routine thing, make it a habit. Every so often you need to make sure that you know what you're doing and that these items work. I mean, I won't lie, my husband probably still he had this can of bear spray that he had when we met like 11 years ago. It's still kicking around here somewhere. And I'm like, I don't think this works. This is probably expired by now, but it's just those little things you have to think of. So, it's awesome that women are arming themselves with whatever they choose to arm themselves with. But again, that's not enough. You've got to know how to use it.
I agree. And I'm actually not gonna weigh in too much on what you should arm yourself with, other
Mhm.
than one, there's two things that they'll teach you in self-defense classes. One, if you're going to be out with it, you should know very well how to use it. If
Mhm.
you buy a gun or a knife or bear spray or whatever, I actually really like bear spray. It doesn't take a lot of aim. It is just fucking terrible to be hit with, right? Like, it's awful. It helps with bears. It tends to help with humans, but you have to know how to use it.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it is not helpful.
Mhm.
Right? So like, go take a course if you need to. I don't care. And
Mhm.
then two, whatever you have as a defense weapon, you should be prepared to be hit with. And this is the
Mhm.
thing they will teach you in self-defense. It's a knife, you should be prepared to be cut. If it's a gun, you should be prepared to get shot. And that's not shot to death, but like, stray things happen. You
Mhm.
might get hit. And it definitely tell you this with a knife. It is very likely that you're going to get cut. You might do more damage to the other person. They still might slash your arm or something, right? So this is a very likely scenario. If you use pepper spray, you might incapacitate the person, but your eyes are probably going to get red because that stuff does like flare. So
Mhm.
whatever you're going to use, you should be prepared to be hit with. And they do this to police officers in training. They spray them with pepper spray. sorry, I'm not going to share this like super public on the podcast, but I had a friend who was trained to be a police officer, and they sprayed him with pepper spray. And basically, like, you can't take a normal shower standing up. You have to be like bent over at 90 degrees because it will just rain down on the rest of your body.
Oh,
So there's like 20 men in a shower basically in that. And there's a much more detailed version of that
oh
story,
no.
but it's very like, it's a ridiculous thing that happens. And they prep you to do it because you're probably going to get hit with it. So whatever you're carrying for self defense, be at least mentally okay with the fact that that might be used against you.
Absolutely. And I think it also boils down to comfort levels. You know, people could sit here and argue all day what is the best form of self-defense. Like, you know, do you carry a gun? Do you carry a knife? If you're not comfortable using it, you know, if you're apps like even if you know how to shoot the gun and you've taken all the courses, but you ultimately don't want to use it and you don't use it, then it's not helpful to you. So
Yeah,
there's no reason in that case to carry it. And I don't think I really believe it boils down to personal comfort level there, you know. So I'm
great.
with you in that. I will not sit here and tell anyone to carry anything at all. You know, if they don't want to, that's their comfort level. And you know, I don't think anyone's right or wrong to tell them otherwise. But I do think that, you know, we can sit here and tell people that if you don't know how to use what you are carrying, then that's a problem. So you've
Absolutely
got to
true.
be comfortable with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
And on that front, like, these are things this is one thing I definitely don't know. So I don't have any recommendations for. Somebody asked, like, is there something equivalent to like tracker or life alert or something that if something goes wrong or whatever, like you could pull the button, like one of those, blue things on college campuses, or like I used to be into skiing, like we have Avi beacons and that kind of stuff. Is there anything that can serve that purpose for you?
yeah, there's a lot of products out there. I know I'll forget some, but just, you know, starting off the top of my head, you can start with Garmin alone. They have, you know, the sensors that if you fall or if there's like unexpected impact or something like that, they're going to go off. I'm pretty sure that
Cool.
there may be like a call button on there as well. You've got your spot trackers. You know, a lot of people who do backcountry kind of stuff, they make the mini ones now that are a lot smaller, and you have your SOS button right there. And you can set those like to whether, you know, are you calling like emergency services, or are you calling your family at home or whatever. I know that there are other products as well, but that's a great point, that these are things that, you know, worst case scenario, or not, let's say best case scenario, you accidentally hit it, oh well, you know, at least
Yeah.
somebody is checking in on you. That's not a big deal. You know, that's not something that's ever going to be used against you. So
Hmm.
that's a great thing to have. And that kind of lends also to the whole idea of always making sure you tell people where you're going.
Yep.
Someone you trust, you know, you always want to tell somebody where you're going, when you expect to be back, exactly where you're going. I mean, it feels like overkill, you know, especially when you go running 5, 6 days a week, to be like,
Sure.
okay, you know, partner, here I go again on the same exact little route I do every day or whatever it is. But it's important
No,
because
for sure.
yeah, if that one time you don't come back, they're not going, oh, gee, well, I can guess where maybe she went.
I mean, sorry, like a lot of us are trail runners too. It's probably just safety in general, right? Like I don't most of the time I'm around here, and I'm probably less responsible about it as I should be because I look like this. But like if I'm doing a trail run, I tend to go up into a canyon 2 miles that way where the entrance is, and then my cell service immediately doesn't exist. So when I'm going to go do my long run up there, like I tell someone that, hey, I'm going to go run pipeline for the next few hours. If you don't hear from me by 5 p.m., like something is wrong. I don't know
Mm-hmm,
what, but something is wrong.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's just a good thing for us to get in the habit of. Like, tell people where you're going to be.
Absolutely. I mean, it takes 2 seconds out of your day and it could make the difference, especially, yeah, like you said, we can ignore human risk completely in this case when
Mm-hmm.
you're out running, whether you know, you get lost, who knows? You trip over a rock and break your leg and can't get out. There's so
Yeah,
many situations that could happen. So it is a great habit to get into. Um
100%.
yeah. So, you know, the next thing, talking about trackers, is also being aware of things that track you that you might not want tracking you and that other people can track you with. And I know that's been a recent issue, or a recent conversation with like Strava. I'm one of those
Interesting.
runners who doesn't use Strava. Sorry, Strava, it's not you, it's me.
Me
I just
neither. I, me neither. I'm with you.
yeah, and that was something I kind of got into the habit of not using when I started coaching, because I just didn't want my athletes comparing themselves to what I was or wasn't, and
Yeah, no,
because
100%.
I'll admit I'm a pain in the ass ultra runner. I occasionally do things I shouldn't.
Sure. Yeah, no, I feel
So
that.
so I stopped using Strava, and now I'm glad I did. I don't want anyone to be able to track me.
Yeah.
I don't want people to see like, okay, every Tuesday around 10, she goes here, or every Wednesday, so just be aware. And there's multiple services out there that you might not be aware are tracking you and that people could follow you on. So just kind of be aware of that as well.
Absolutely. And you don't need to be paranoid about it. Like I
Yeah.
realize like it's not that hard, really,
Mhm,
if somebody is really putting in the effort.
mhm,
And most of the time they're not, and it's going to be fine. And like there's some Strava data that will probably show you my old house pretty clearly and all
mhm.
that stuff. But like, and yes, you can obfuscate the entry point or whatever buttons you can click. But like somebody's really motivated, it's just not that hard. So be aware of
Exactly.
that. That's all.
Mhm. Yeah. And the same goes for, the whole like, and I've said it before, but telling people not to run the same route every day. Well, the reality is, a lot of us are very busy in life. Like,
Yeah.
we're moms, we're dads, we're employees, we have responsibilities, and we
Yeah.
often have this one tiny window where we can run, and this one route that is like maybe right from our house. And like, that's just when it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And you can't avoid that. And so, like I posted the other day in my list of things, like don't run the same route over and over. But then I thought about it. I was like, that's horrible advice, because that's going to mean some people just aren't running, or they're just not working out.
I feel the same with the like don't run in the dark thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's great advice and in theory, but like it's dark here from here in Utah, and we're not even like as high as you can get in the States, right? So like here in Utah in the winter, it is dark from like 4:30 p.m. to like 9 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
When are you gonna run?
Right.
Like if that's your
Yeah.
sport. And granted, most people out here ski or do something, so it's not like your only option, but like if you want to run outside, that's not going to happen for 4 months out of the year if that's your policy. Don't run in the dark.
Exactly. And then, if we look at the statistics, don't quote me on the exacts here, but I remember writing a
Of
blog
course not.
post a while back, and it was about, what time of day do most random violent attacks occur, not just on runners, but in general, just like
Yes.
violent acts. It's not in the wee hours of the morning, or it's not in the dark. It's kind of like in the middle of the day,
Yeah.
So just 2 days ago, it was on the 3 days ago, 4 days ago, I don't remember, it was sometime this week, there was an attack on a woman who was running in Charlotte, North Carolina. A man pulled her off of a paved trail and apparently tried to pull her clothes off and rape her. She got away, thankfully, but that happened at 11 a.m. I mean, in the middle of the day, there was probably people around.
Yeah.
So we can't be telling, anyone, especially women, like, well, don't go out at 4:30 in the morning. Like, no, it's you have to do what you have to do. And like you said, with the tracking, if somebody really wants to follow you or hurt you or anything like that, they're gonna find a way. So you need to be prepared. Otherwise, you don't need to be paranoid. You just need to be prepared.
Absolutely. And like I'll reiterate what I said in the beginning. Like a lot of people are pointing out that both ends of this shit
Mhm,
happens all the time, right?
mhm,
And that said, it's still probably running at 3 a.m. is probably still safer than driving.
mhm,
Right. So like there's a risk to everything.
mhm,
The whole point of this podcast is to help you learn some things to help you be safer and feel safer. Right.
mhm.
Like there's dangers to everything. And yet, like, you're never going to mitigate all of them. And yet we can do some things to make you be a little safer and feel a little more confident.
Absolutely. Another, while we're on the topic of like devices, one that gets me a little frustrated is I see a lot of people talking about like, well, wear the bone conducting headphones, the
Mm,
Aftershocks. I have a pair and I have a couple pairs. I love them. They're great. But I think it's another thing that is kind of lulls us into a sense of security that
Sure.
may be a false sense of security. I've absolutely had mine on, I'll admit it. I've had them on in my neighborhood, not even full volume. And someone came up behind me, just on a bike. They weren't like, nobody was out to hurt me, but they came by on a bike and it scared the crap out of me because I
Yeah,
didn't, and I had those, not on my ears, bone conducting headphones on. So like, don't get lulled into thinking that one certain product or whatever is going to protect you or that these are okay. You've
100%.
got to be aware of your surroundings. And as a runner who enjoys like mentally checking out when I run, that's hard. It's hard. It really is hard to do
Yeah,
that. But just
I feel
being
that.
aware and trusting your gut instincts.
And like there's validity to those headphones. Like you can hear more. You're actually probably going to hear footsteps okay most of the
Mhm.
time. But like I tend to wear with one earbud, and I actually want to get some of those like aftershocks, whatever they're called. I
Yeah.
just haven't done it yet. But don't run with these either. For those who aren't watching this, like I have like over the ear headphones. I saw some woman, and this had nothing to do with her woman. It just was like she was crossing the street with like over the ear headphones in, and almost got hit by a car because she didn't look first because she didn't hear it. Over the ear, like full volume headphones are not safe any time of day.
Mhm.
And if you're gonna wear headphones while you run, which I do, I wear one earbud in, like you're still probably going to be susceptible to not hearing bikes or something very well.
Mhm.
Right? Like there's a trail where I run with a ton of crickets, and it feels like it hears exactly like a bike spoke, and there's no way I can differentiate those things constantly, especially with like a headphone in.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another thing that just boils down to safety in general. Like, again, forgetting attacks from other humans. I mountain bike a lot myself, and our local trail is run and bike. And I cannot tell you the number of times I've come around a blind corner and here's a runner like la la la, and they've got their headphones on. They don't hear me, they don't even see me because they're
Yeah,
looking down or around. And I have to like, thankfully I'm paying attention so that I don't hit them, but
100%.
it's just not safe. So
Yeah,
I always tell my clients, like, if you're having one of those days where you need to mentally check out, put those noise canceling headphones on, get on a treadmill and just go to town. Like,
yeah,
check out that way. But yeah, for the safety of yourself and others, it's not the best idea to be
agreed.
out there and unaware of what's going on.
I also like I leave for work at 4 or 5 in the morning. It's very dark out. And some people run without any like in full black at that time of day, like on the
Mm-hmm.
road because they don't like running on the sidewalk. And I have been scared like as the driver, like holy shit, there's a human
Yeah.
like 10 feet in front of my car. This is a thing that like either choose the sidewalk or like wear some reflective clothing or some lights or something. Like just please be aware that like you're not visible. I know you can see the car, we can't see you.
Yeah, yeah, that happens. We go to the gym at like 5 in the morning, same thing.
Yep.
See it all the time. You're like, oh,
And
yeah.
most of the time it's like it's one dude. I like I see him every week, but it's
Mhm.
just like come on man, you scare me
A little
weekly.
reflection. That's all we need. Like reflectors, you're good to go. No,
Yeah, just a little bit.
I agree. Um, Another thing that I had talked about with my community is more trail specific. And now the interesting thing that I've seen come out of the trail community in the last week is a lot of people, women especially, saying that they actually feel safer on trails, which is not what we would think, what most people would think. But as a trail runner myself, I get it. You see less people out there, especially in some of these more remote places. Like, our instinct might be that like, oh well, you're in a remote area, how are you going to get to help? But the truth is, there's not a lot of people just lingering in these remote areas. They're probably only out there for the same reasons you are. Now that's not
Sure.
to say it's super safe, or that you should be lulled into a sense of security, but it is an interesting observation. But that said, one of the big things I recommend is, and this is for men and women, get comfortable with like land navigation, understanding how to read trails and like know how to get to safety if for whatever reason you get off trail. Whether that's you got lost or whether that's somebody chased you and you went off trail
Mm,
to avoid them. Like there's so many kind of really basic tips that that if you know them, they can save your life, like understanding how to kind of follow a stream, that's going to bring you like to a bigger one, to a river, to get you somewhere else. Or if it's a local trail system, like learn it. My local trail system is not that big. Again, I'm in Myrtle Beach, so we're not like the trail
Sure.
capital of the world or anything, but if I'm out there and something happened, I could tell you exactly from any given point how to get to safety, like whether I
Cool.
have to cross over trails or, and that's obviously something that I learned over time. But I feel like, we rely on our phones and technology so much. And, if you're out there and that doesn't work and you have to read a trail sign or a paper map or like, pin to something, like know how to take care of yourself out there and how to
That's
get
so
back to
true.
safety.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
even basics like here, like most of the trails are somewhere on like that giant mountain right in front of my face, and just head downhill. Like you'll eventually end up foothills. If you don't have that like very obvious note, then we definitely need to have a little better idea of where the hell we are, for sure.
yeah. Yeah, and even little things like being able to look at the sun and be like, okay, it's kind of in this
Mm-hmm.
position, which means that this must be north and this must be south. Like these are things that most of us don't really know, but it's not that hard to learn. So
Absolutely.
yeah, and this is, I didn't really learn a lot of this until I got into adventure racing, and my team decided I should be like the navigator. I'm like, okay, so but it's actually really helpful stuff. And so I highly recommend that to people who run on trails more than they do on roads. Like just kind of be really comfortable with that, and especially if you're on a trail.
Sorry for that very weird edit. Heather's internet or my internet or something kicked her off the Zoom channel, and we're back to it. So Heather, you're saying if you're kind of lost in a trail system, you just kind of need to know how to get out of it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Just having these, again, another life skill, that taking the human risk out of the equation, even just getting lost or in a storm or something like that. It's helpful knowledge to have to kind of protect yourself.
For sure. I think that actually covers most of the stuff. I would say I had a couple questions about like hairstyles or clothing or anything that might be a thing. And I would again like to preface as I have in the past. I think you should be able to run naked and have it not be an
Mhm.
issue. Um, Whereas that's just might not be the case. That said, it also is, it's 115 in the Bay Area last week. So, you know, maybe some ideas here. And when I say hairstyles, something that we've learned in some self-defense classes, ponytails are really easy to grab, whereas like
Mhm.
a tighter hairstyle, not so much. So what are some ideas that you have that aren't gonna like light the internet on fire
Yeah.
that might
Yeah.
kind of help you out?
Yeah, I'm with you 100% in that, like, women wear what you want. A man, I should say a person, anybody
For sure.
is, they're going to attack you. If they are out to hurt somebody, they're going to hurt somebody whether or not you're in a shirt or a sports bra. So it's
Absolutely
not
true.
like going out there and being like, "Oh, look at my skin," is gonna, it's not like, it's not asking for it, right? That's
The person's
not.
clearly fucking unhinged, right? Like it doesn't, a little skin
Yeah,
is not going to matter. The dude sucks, right? So
exactly.
yeah,
So wear whatever the hell you want. But that said, I know in self-defense classes, they will tell you that, looser clothing is easier to grab onto. As far as like the hair goes, I have a ton of hair. So I do what I can, and I get that ponytails are easier, but there are self-defense methods you can learn to get out of that. Like, I
mm-hmm.
remember being taught, if someone grabs my ponytail, you literally, I'm in an office chair, so it's easy to do, but like you start twisting, just start
Yep.
spinning around like a cyclone, and that person's going to lose their grip. So again, it's kind of like learning like how to get out of these situations if you find yourself in them. Um, and that's why I highly recommend taking these courses, because you
Totally
learn these
agree.
tips that, like, who would have thought, that that's something to do. I would have never thought of that in the past. But yeah, so I don't have any specific recommendations as far as clothing to wear or not to wear, because I'm with you. Like, wear what you need to wear to go running. That's what, what are you comfortable in? That's what you should be able to wear. Just also be aware that, like, if I do wear a lot of loose clothing and somebody does attack me, how can I get out of this situation?
Absolutely. I'd say like honestly, that's kind of what I was hoping to hear, is that contrary to what some people might intimate, tighter clothing is actually better here.
Mhm.
Right. So great. Perfect.
Yeah.
Um, they have touched most of the questions I had from people and thoughts I had. What am I missing?
Goodness. Yeah, I think the takeaway here is that this has happened before and this is gonna happen again. I hate to think that, but it's the world we live in. And so when all of this dies down, as it will, something else is gonna happen and the internet attention is gonna go to another topic. Don't let your guard down on all of this safety, whether you're
Mm-hmm.
a man or a woman. Like at the end of the day, we can't control other people, but we can control ourselves, and we are our number one protectors. You can't rely on anyone else. So you have to be like your number one advocate and your number one protector. So just don't let this go out of your mind when we're all on to the next, headline is I guess the kind of takeaway here. An
And you actually,
unfortunate one, but the reality of it.
true, and you actually made this point before we got on, and I just like to reiterate it, but it's very much yours, where if you want to feel safe with something, you have to practice it. Just like you have to practice running, you have to practice strength training. Like these are skills that you
Mhm.
have to practice for them to actually work. And I guess one question that's been kind of floating around is, and I don't have a great answer to this, what can we maybe do as a community to make this better? Because I'm a huge fan of trying to attack things from all angles. Right?
Mhm.
Like I think it actually is the way to go, and I think we often end up in this either or situation where it's like, all people are going to suck, so maybe we need to go this way, or um, if you're having self defense, this does need to change. And like I think maybe we need to try and make some changes systemically while also feeling and being safer from a
Yeah.
practical standpoint. Any,
Yeah,
particular thoughts on that?
I do, and I'll try to like tiptoe on this one because again, I my thoughts are strong here, but
Sure, but you're like
you
raising
know,
two boys and stuff, right? And
yeah,
like
like
that's a thing you could probably, have at least an
absolutely.
opinion on it that has some fucking weight on it.
Mhm, absolutely. I mean, like on the most basic level, we can say like, and again, I'm gonna call out men here. Men, stop being assholes. Like, don't. You may think it's innocent enough to just like check out a woman who when she runs by or catcall her or whatever, but that only adds to
Yeah,
the discomfort for women. It's just not cool, and it only kind of like pushes this narrative that it's okay to do that, and like
yeah,
so where do we stop, right? So obviously that's the most basic, and I've seen a lot of men saying like let's encourage other men to not do that and whatever, and but ultimately like that's not the problem. It's not men within the running community having to tell other men within the running community to stop attacking women. That's not it. We're talking like way bigger issues we have here, like you said, systemic issues. We're talking mental health care. We're talking just like safety in
yeah,
communities, like, and that's a whole nother platform of like, do we have appropriate police force? I don't even know, like I'm not
sure,
even gonna go that deep, but what I will say is that what it boils down to is that you have to vote for what you believe in, and like you've got to attack this on a community level. If we have people getting attacked because there's not mental health care or whatever you may believe about like weapons or guns or whatever, like that's where we need
yeah,
to attack it from. This is not
exactly,
like in this instance, it's a runner who is the victim, but this is not like a running community problem. This affects people all in all different kinds of communities. So
absolutely. And I would say like from I guess address this on just even a like smaller but like very effective thing. If you see somebody being a dickhead, fucking call them out. Like, and it
exactly.
doesn't even need to be super publicly, right?
Mhm.
Like I as as an example, I'm going to make this as vague as humanly possible. At the gym, I often see men staring at women in ways that are creepy.
Mhm.
And there are ways to look at other people in the gym that are not creepy and ways that are very creepy. Right? Like there is the like, oh, her form is amazing, or oh, she's attractive. And then there's the like leering
The
look
oogle.
that is
Mhm.
terrifying.
Mhm.
And if you see someone do that, at the very least, like stare at that dude and let him know that he's being a fucking creep. Right?
Yeah,
And preferably say something, but I realize like not everybody's being comfortable with that. But call this shit out. It's a thing we can do to like make this not acceptable.
exactly. It's the see something, say something, right? And we hear that all the time in everywhere, really. But
Yeah.
you like making it more running specific. If you see someone else who maybe looks uncomfortable, and you're not sure what the situation is, like it's often our inclination to not get involved, but don't be that person. I mean, a simple like, are you okay? Like, are you
Just
comfortable?
gonna say that.
Yeah, or even if you don't want to get involved, but your gut instinct is that something is not right, call the police, call security, call whatever, kind of
Mm-hmm.
situation or wherever you may be. Like my brain's going to like a campus or something, but make a call. Worst
Yeah.
case scenario, everything's fine, but like you may save somebody's life that way. So if you see something, say something, whether it's like you said, telling somebody like, stop, that's not cool, don't do that, or actually like you don't ever want to put yourself in a position where now you're unsafe as well,
Or say
right?
not. Please don't
But
do that.
yeah, but like don't ignore,
Yeah.
because you never know what may be going on.
You can do a lot with eye contact too.
Hmm.
Like you can say, are you okay with eye contact?
Hmm.
Like that is a
Absolutely,
thing you can do.
absolutely.
So just don't normalize this shit. It
Hmm.
helps. And it's a slow process. I realize it's not going to fix it tomorrow, which is why we're also talking about the shit we can do in the meantime. Right.
Hmm.
But like,
Hmm.
yeah, hit it from both ends. Well, thank you
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
much. I really
You're
appreciate you coming
welcome.
on here.
Thank you for having me. And like I said earlier, I'm not an expert in any of this, but I am
Sure.
um obviously I'm a runner, I'm a coach. I've been working with athletes for a long, long time. And so and as a female, I have been in situations, I have seen situations, and I think that at the end of the day, as much as we'd like this world to change, and I hope it does, it's not going to overnight, like you said. So we've got to take care of ourselves.
Well, couldn't agree more. Thank you so much. I'm going to close this out. Hang out for one sec. Thank you to anybody who listened to this. If anything on here it would be helpful to anybody, please share it with them. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the show. To be clear, I'm not a doctor nor a registered dietitian, and nothing you heard was medical advice. You should always speak with a qualified medical professional before making any changes to your training regimen. If you enjoy the podcast or found it useful, please take a couple seconds to give it a rating or share it with a friend. Every little bit helps. And if you want more of this information, please head to the Trail and Ultra Running Nutrition group on Facebook. You'll be in good company with other like-minded people who like to do hard stuff outside.